Hi, guys. Welcome to our daily encounter. One of the most difficult things we have to deal with in life is difficult people. People we just have a hard time getting along with. Maybe it's because of some history that we have with the individual. Maybe it's because of personality conflicts, or they just have a strong personality, or they simply don't like us. And so they give us a hard time. Dealing with difficult people is very, very hard and can be very stressful and difficult. David had to deal with a difficult person in our reading today in 2 Samuel chapter 16. Shimei was a man of the family of the house of Saul, and as David and his men were walking, he was going alongside them and casting stones and dirt and curses at them, and just doing it all the while, not just one or two times, but continually while they were walking. And Abishai gets really annoyed, and he tells David, he says, let me just go cut off his head. And David says, no, don't do that. And David gives us a great example of how to deal with difficult people. And one of the first things that he teaches us is not to be violent in those set of circumstances. As he told Abishai, he says, do not, don't cut off his head, basically, paraphrasing there. But he shows us that, if we're dealing with a difficult person, the first thing to remember is not to be violent. Don't be physically violent, but also don't be verbally violent towards them. We have to remember that the Lord tells us to love our enemies, do good to those who mistreat us, who cast insults at us. That's the type of attitude that we should have as Christians, and it's what's exemplified here by David. The next thing to remember is that it's important to submit to the circumstance. And here I'm not talking about if you're being physically abused or verbally abused. There's times when we need to get out of the situation for our own safety and for the safety of other people around us. But under normal circumstances, when it's just a person that is just kind of hard to get along with, that you have a personality conflict with or something like that, it's good to submit to the circumstance. And David does this in verse 10. It says, but the king said, what do I have to do with you, O sons of Zeruiah? If he curses, and if the Lord has told him, curse David, then who shall say, why have you done so? So he's saying, maybe this is from the Lord, and I'm just going to submit to it and put it in God's hands. And that goes a long way in helping us to deal with difficult people, because once we've surrendered to the Lord, then it's a little bit easier to go with the flow and to kind of take the situation with a grain of salt. But then we also need to put things in perspective as well. David did this in verse 11. He said to Abishai, behold, my son who came out from me seeks my life. How much more now this Benjamite? Let him alone and let him curse, for the Lord has told him. He says, my own son's coming out against me. Why would I do anything against this Benjaminite? And it helped him put things into perspective. And we too can put things into perspective in similar circumstances. It might be that we realize maybe we did something wrong that we deserve the type of treatment that we're receiving, or maybe it's because we realize that this circumstance might work out in a favorable way towards us. Maybe by looking at the broader picture, it might help us put things in perspective. It could be a lot of different things. It's different with each circumstance, but the main thing is that we put things in perspective to help us kind of process what's going on in the situation. But then we should place our hope in God. In verse 12, perhaps the Lord will look on my affliction and return good to me instead of this cursing this day. He put his hope in the Lord. He said, maybe the Lord will look down and see this cursing and have sympathy towards me and change the situation. And it goes a long way when we can put our trust in the Lord and hope in the Lord that he will step in and fix the situation, instead of trying to handle it in our own strength and in our own ingenuity and planning. And then lastly, we need to learn how to receive refreshing. In verse 14, the king and all the people who were with him arrived weary, and he refreshed himself there. We need to find ways in which we can refresh ourselves. If it's an individual that we have to deal with each and every day, it's important for us to get away, be alone with the Lord, get in the Word, spend time in prayer and worship, to rejuvenate our spirit, to enliven our spirit again, to open ourselves up to the Lord again, and refresh ourselves in His presence, so that when we are in the presence of this individual that's being difficult, we can express Christ, and we can express God, and the love of God, and the grace of God, and the mercy of God through our words and through our actions towards that individual. But it becomes very difficult to do that if we're not continually going back to the Lord and receiving refreshing throughout the day. So these are some things that David did with Shimei. These are some things that we can do when we have to deal with difficult people that will help us to endure and to treat the person the right way, by not being violent towards them, by submitting to the situation, putting things into perspective, placing our hope in God, and finding ways to refresh ourselves so that we can endure. So these are some things to think about as we do our reading today. With that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.